Good afternoon. It is the 10th of December 2025, and I have Simon Roche with me in the studio today. Simon, welcome on the channel and thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you very much for having Suidlanders back on your show, Colleen. We appreciate it.
Okay, we had to take a little bit of a break. There was an internet problem and things like that, but we are now back, and we ended where Simon was telling us that the attack on the Christian man is through his wife, and that the weakness of the Christian man is in his wife. And that is one of the things that and I've spoken about it a lot on my channel, is that there is an amazing, actually not amazing, is a brutal attack on families. The core families are being broken down and destroyed by all sorts of things. Okay, Simon, the floor is yours.
Okay, so now we go to part two of this story. And I can't swear that the two things are absolutely connected. If you see a nuclear bomb go off in Ukraine, you may, in time, the viewer, may say, well, that was the event in the year of the snake that would cause the year of the horse to break the neck of mankind. So I'm not swearing that this is necessarily 100% connected, but listen carefully, because it is deep and dark, and it's happening now. Firstly, I'd like to give credit to Kurt, who set me on the journey of this part of the story, the second half. I've already described to you how I stumbled into the first half of the story. I'd like to give credit to Kurt, and I must give credit to a man who shall remain nameless, who is the world's leading geologist. I told him I was going to allude to him in that way this afternoon, and he burst into gales of laughter. He said, many people in the mining community would be offended by that. He said, some would say it's true, but he said, this guy, I know him fairly well, is one of only 4 people living with his qualifications, and 2 of them have retired. He's also, I have to be vague now, otherwise people would be able to work it out, and he doesn't want his identity revealed. He's one of only 4 people who, under international law, are protected when it comes to giving advice in, let's say, a court of law. If he gives expert testimony in a court of law, by international law, it has to be accepted. He's a phenomenal guy, and he's often not available. You know, we speak a little bit here and there, and sometimes he's not available. He'll say to me, "Oh, Simon, I'm busy, man. I'm with the Saudi royal family. I was, with the king until 10 o'clock last night, and then the crown prince and I were working until 2 o'clock this morning. It's really intense here." He's that kind of a level of operator. And today we held a 1 hour, 31 minute and 21 seconds telephone conversation discussing what I'm about to describe to you. We've seen recently that the gold and silver prices have moved. That's because the market pressure is so great that the forces that have been used to suppress the prices, that's a long story all by its own. If you want to know what the price, why the price has been whatever it has been for the past, call it 30 years, it's because of price suppression, largely by big international banks. JP Morgan is one that has been very much associated with it, convicted of this as a crime, pushing the price down. There are all sorts of techniques that they do to suppress the price. But the pressure has become so great that the price has been going up regardless. In the USA, leave is a rare commodity. They don't get public holidays and 3 weeks minimum leave like we do in South Africa, for instance. Thanksgiving is always held on a Thursday, not a date, a day. Therefore, the Thanksgiving weekend is, for most Americans, the only 4-day weekend that they get. So everybody takes it with grateful hands. On Thanksgiving, which happened 2 weeks ago, the country shuts down. Obviously, you can catch flights and what have you, but it's not worth the trouble. Nobody wants to work, and very few people do work. It's best just to, take a day's leave the day before, 2 days leave, travel across the country to your mom and dad, and hunker down for 3 or 4 days and fly back on the Sunday, and you're back at work on the Monday. You're foolish if you try to get much done. On 2 Fridays ago, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the largest thing of its sort in the world, subdivision, the commodities exchange, the COMEX, its subdivision, the silver exchange, was shut down for 10 hours. This was one of the biggest events in the history of the world. And they said that the reason was that they couldn't keep the servers cool enough. An air conditioning system had broken. Within 1 hour, all over the internet, there were these guys who specialize in that field saying that's an absolute lie. Firstly, the COMEX has 4 systems. 3 of them are redundant. And also under US law, because it is such an important thing, they're allowed, which you're not allowed to do with certain other systems, to open the windows. And it's in Chicago, in the north of the USA, in Chicago, Illinois, and it's freezing cold this time of year. This is an absolute rubbish story, and very big specialists were coming into this argument. Anyway, it's since turned out that what actually happened was, now I should point out that the COMEX is a tier 1 military installation under US law. That means it's in the same tier as the White House and nuclear missile silos for protection and this and that, the next thing, in strategic importance, and it can never fail. And it's the biggest silver exchange in the world. And it is the magnetic north, if you like, for the entire world industry, buying and selling silver. And so for 10 hours, the entire world silver exchange industry was in limbo. I'm very sorely tempted to use strong, crass language. I'm not going to. But the importance and the significance of this, they brought the world to a halt in that regard. In recent years, big banks in the USA have been buying up enormous amounts of silver. Huge, 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 huge amounts. And nobody knows what they're doing with them. Why? While suppressing the price. So it's in their interest to keep the price down and to buy lots of it. And they're responsible for both. Silver is a byproduct. We're going to simplify here. There are 2 things that we're really going to simplify. So if there's some professor at home in Johannesburg taking offense at me oversimplifying, please understand, Professor, that I'm doing it for the average layman who knows nothing about this stuff. And if I told the story with all of its complicated subsets and details and what have you, nobody would get any benefits out of the video because they wouldn't understand the video. So we're going to refer to all silver as silver. We're going to disregard the fact that the price that you see on the news, on the TV, is not the price for which you can buy silver. It's completely different. That's a price that people are betting on for 30 days' time, and it's for it's futures and paper, so it's not real silver. The same with gold. But we're just going to keep it simple and talk about silver and gold, each as one thing, rather than the varieties of them: paper, undelivered, registry, free float, all of that kind of stuff. We're just going to ignore for the sake of simplicity. Silver this is the second generalization or oversimplification. Silver is the byproduct of copper mining. When you mine copper, the rule of thumb is that about 0.5% of what you mine is the actual copper. About 0.5% of a chunk of rock with copper in it, only about 0.5% of that chunk of rock is the copper that you're looking for. If you get 1,000 kilograms of copper, in other words, you've mined 200 times that 1,000 kilograms to get 0.5%, 1,000 kilograms, 10 grams is silver. This is a rough generalization. Silver isn't mined in silver mines. There are exceptions, but there's so few that we'll have a third generalization. We'll just, for the sake of simplicity, say that for all practical intents and purposes, certainly yours and mine, silver doesn't come from silver mines, it comes from copper mines. Okay. In any given year, 800 million ounces of silver are produced from these copper mines, and the amount can't be increased. There are various reasons why. It's a pipe dream to believe that if we push harder next year, boys, we can make it 850 million ounces. So that's your about another 200 million ounces are recovered. So there's 1 billion ounces in the market for purchase a year. The demand for silver is about 1.3 billion ounces. So there is 300 million ounces short every year. And that silver is mostly used in electronic goods. And it can't be increased. The volume of it can't be increased. And there is no substitute for silver. People talk about substitutes, but they never say what it is, because it's a dream. It's a lovely idea, but it's a fiction. The world needs silver to function in the modern world today, desperately. The demand for jewelry and holding silver in your hand is very, very much less, except for these banks that have been buying these fantastical volumes of silver. On Thanksgiving Friday, the day when the whole of America's back is turned, I've already described to you the whole Thanksgiving story. Nobody's there. You have contracts. We make a contract, and I'm going to get silver. It's usually just on paper, and it's sold 150 times for every ounce that there is. So it's a big con story. It's the biggest Ponzi scheme in history, is the fact that there's this much silver, and these buggers are allowed to get away with selling the same silver 150 times over. And the way they get away with it is by telling people, you know what, I'll look after it for you. You can trust me. You know what, let's just put it on paper. And they get away with it. And they often bribe. They pay huge bribes. If you stamp your foot and say, I bought 1,000 ounces of silver on the COMEX. I'm here in Chicago, Illinois. I've flown all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa. I demand my 1,000 ounces. They're going to say to you, tell you what, we'll give you your money back, and we'll give you, whatever, say $100,000. Is that okay? And you walk away smiling. That's how this scam is protected. It is believed to be a syndicate of Middle Eastern people. Somebody's contracts, 7,300 contracts, came due on Thanksgiving Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, which is always on a Thursday. And it was for 38 million ounces. Bearing in mind, I've told you how much is produced in a year and what the shortfall is. So any of you who are, quite good at mathematics, you can get a sense of perspective. This is like an elephant next to a mouse, or whatever sense of perspective you'd like to, have in your mind. In one day, while the world's back was turned, these guys from the Middle East said, we want our silver physically delivered to us. You have a day or two to get that right. The world went into frantic mode. The White House, given that this is a tier 1 military facility under US law, authorized the COMEX to shut down so that there wouldn't be any trade, and that would carry on over the weekend, so it would give the world 3 days to catch its breath over this unbelievable event. There is a set of contracts, 10,000 of them, that's going to fall due at the COMEX on Christmas Day for physical delivery on the 31st of December. It's for 50 million ounces of a substance of which only 800 million ounces is mined in a year. And then you can throw in the recovered stuff, from old telephones, whatever, scrapyards in India, you've all seen the videos. 50 million of 1,000 million. So 1/20th. 1/20th is going to be snapped up on Christmas Day, and nobody knows yet who it is that's going to take physical delivery. The ramifications for the world, I mentioned earlier, I spoke to the world's top geologist. This guy, there's a lot of his story I can't tell you. It's the most amazing story of a human's life that you've ever heard. This guy, who knows more about geology than any living human being, who is protected by international law, from gainsay. International, South African, international law applicable to every country. There's a reason why it's not like the Geneva Conventions where only half the countries or whatever, 3/4 sign them, and the rest say, by every country in the world, you are not allowed to disagree with him. He he said to me the consequences. I rang him. We've been talking in recent days, but I said I want to understand something that I heard just this morning. So we spoke for an hour and a half. And he said the consequences are unavoidable. He's a very cautious guy, very, very cautious. And for about 20 minutes, he was saying, well, we don't know for sure, and you never can tell, and who knows. And I just kept throwing facts at him because I studied this thing intensely or intensively. So eventually he cracked under the pressure and he said to me, all right. I'm taking off my official hat and I'll talk candidly. I'll tell you the truth. He said to me, this is so big, it's unbelievable. These are the effects on global finance. It's going to absolutely upend. We don't know to what extent. We don't know whether it'll happen on the 26th of December. We don't know how they'll be able to, what they'll repress, how they'll repress it. We don't know everything, but we do know that this is very, very serious and it poses a threat to the entire global financial system. Now, in this, something has happened. There's a guy called Max Kaiser of the Kaiser Report. His wife's name is Stacey Herbert. That woman that sits next to him, that's his wife, on Russia Today. And she is obviously a level-headed, sensible person, and he's quite close to having psychosis. But Max is far beyond a genius. He stopped working in his 20s because he got developed systems that are used in stock exchanges around the world. And he patented them, whatever, and he was given some ridiculous amount of money for that. He's never had to work since, but he's very clever and clearly autistic. I mean, very clearly autistic. And he said a few years ago that Deutsche Bank's America operation has $27 trillion of unrealized losses. That's when, I'm going to, again, Professor, I'm trying to keep it simple. That's when you do a deal, but you don't have to pay up right away. You can kick the can down the road. And that's why in the 2008 financial crisis, these banks had to be rescued, because the numbers that we were told and the real numbers involved are as far as the East is from the West. And a few years ago, that number was $27 trillion. Why? Because the world is filled with palookas. We no longer live in a meritocracy. We live in a world where you get ahead if you're part of the get-along gang. You're not required to be so much clever as part of the system. And so it is that you have these children who do well at school and they study every afternoon and they don't go and play outside and they get decent marks and then they go to university. And then companies like Allen Gray and the banks and the what have you, they select from them who got the highest marks. Not does the person have a brain? Because those people who got the high marks, all of them, with no exceptions, fell for 2020. And you had to be mentally retarded to believe the following story. Everybody is dropping dead like flies around you. It's only you who can't see it. You have to be, by definition, mentally retarded to have believed the 2020 narrative. The whole of Sandton believed the 2020 narrative. The whole of New York. With the result that you have mentally retarded people placing bets all the time on various things that are going to happen. And it has left the banking system of the world with, they say, $1 quadrillion of debt. So $1 billion is 1,000 million in modern English, horrible English. 1,000 million. $1 trillion is 1,000 billion. And a quadrillion is 1,000 trillion. The world is so bankrupt, it's untrue. And if this thing starts to unravel, none of us makes it through. The knock-on effects are too big. During that thing on Thanksgiving Friday, part of the reason why they stopped the trade for 10 hours was because the price was being pushed so hard by this 38 million ounce delivery, this price that has been pushed down for so long, like a spring, that they couldn't contain it. So they shut down all trade because silver was about to go through $58 an ounce. Now, they can't allow that because these idiots who got good marks in matric and good marks at Wits University, these people who all took the jab, thought it was a good idea to bet. This is just betting. It's a form of trading called a short. To bet that silver would never, ever go above a certain price. It could be $58, it could be $50. You're in and out of the betting. And these guys have been so consistently dumb that the world now sits with this quadrillion-dollar debt. They're all bankrupt. All. But you don't know it because they have a way of, on their balance sheet, rolling over these unrealized losses so that you don't, it's not like on the balance sheet, the CEO, he's giving the yearly report, the chairman, he says, well, as you can see, line 12, we made a billion rand this year, and there you see line 13, we lost 2 billion, so we a billion in the red. We will be going out of business anytime soon. They have a way of rolling it over, and if you want to look into it, you can. It's possible to understand it, but it would just make this video too complicated. And this is being hidden from the world. But if they buy up all of the world's silver, and then there's a fantastic financial catastrophe next year that breaks the neck of mankind, the price of silver will go so high that they'll say, well, we've been sitting on 50 billion ounces, and it's now, I don't know, whatever, call it $1,000 an ounce. We've got $50 trillion of liquidity. We're fine. So this is a long play that they're making. But what's happening is that other people are catching on, such as the syndicate from Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates that said, in that case, we're buying 38 million ounces and we want it in our hands. No tricks. And somebody else is saying, I want 50 million ounces. Now, there's a problem. In these exchanges, the contracts for next year that haven't, that's to say, before any others. I mean, Kulain, I know your channel's doing quite well. You might put in a contract tomorrow for another 10 million ounces. But as it stands, the contracts for physical delivery for next year are 200 million ounces, of which there are only 145 available to the world. The rest has already all been bought up. There is a demand for 1.3 billion ounces of silver for overwhelmingly, it's also the banks, it's also me, it's you, but overwhelmingly, for all practical intents and purposes, it's the Chinese making iPhones. Again, to keep it simple. And there are only going to be 1 billion ounces available next year, and they're already 300 million ounces short. And in just the exchanges, they're 55 million ounces short. And we have between now, today is the 10th of December, we have between now and, again, I'm oversimplifying, sorry, the 31st of December next year for new physical contracts to be engaged. So the gist of the story is that we might be observing the unfolding of events that are going to turn the world on its head. Silver, it's been rough days, talking to this guy, this genius. I spoke to a guy in the USA, very young guy, very, 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 very wealthy man. And we chatted and he said, you know what? I've just paid myself a bonus of $72,000. He said, I'm gonna go and get some silver right now. And he said to me, what is your advice? I said, there are 3 ways of doing it. A debit card, credit card, cash. I said, if you use a debit card or a credit card, I am telling you that they will know that you've got it. And I'm telling you that it's a guy I know very well. We speak every day for about an hour to an hour and a half, first thing in the morning or during lunch, or when I'm cooking at night. We'll have a big Charlie chat about the world events. He's a very, very exceptionally clever guy. And I said to him, there's going to be a confiscation like there was in 1933, this is a slightly false comparison between silver and gold. Again, Professor, excuse me, I'm trying to keep it simple. In 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed an executive order making it illegal for anybody in the country to possess gold, that they had to come and hand it in for $20 an ounce, 20 and some change, $20 an ounce by law. Police scoured the whole country. They opened every safe deposit box in the United States of America, checked what was inside, gold, took it. And then a month and a half later, or 2 months later, I forget, they said, okay, we're going to allow, you still can't own the gold, but we're going to allow some trade. And oh, by the way, quick mention, it was $20.32. We're now mandating that the value of gold per ounce is $35. It was the greatest theft of wealth in all of the history of mankind. There's nothing that comes close to it, what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in 1933. So I said to him, guaranteed this is coming, because the only way the USA is going to be able to resolve this $38 trillion debt. By the way, the USA's budget this year is $6.5 trillion, the federal budget. The USA's federal receipts, that means to say all of the money that they will take in, customs duties, taxes, company taxes, value-added taxes, you name it, will be $4.5 trillion. So the $38 trillion debt that everybody's talking about now has already been mandated through the budget to be $40 trillion in a few months' time. So we shouldn't talk about $38 trillion. It's already $40 trillion signed into law. The budget has been passed. The only way they're going to be able to sort that out is through hyperinflation. So if I buy an apple from you, Colleen, today for R1 or $1, and I say to you, oh, listen, I'm short of cash. And you say, man, I know you. You've been buying apples from me for years. Pay me tomorrow. Oh, fantastic. We have Zimbabwe inflation overnight. And I bring you $1 tomorrow. You're going to say, what is wrong with you? You want to punch me. You know full well that this was worth what only a cent was worth yesterday. What can I do with this dollar? You waste my time. You should be bringing me 100. I'm going to say, yeah, but that was the deal. So if the USA is a hyperinflation event, it can inflate away its debt, paying everybody off in worthless money, but that's the money that the deal is based on. And if they've got fantastical amounts of precious metals to back that up, good, but they don't. So they're going to have to steal it. The USA is meant to have about 8,000 tons of gold in Fort Knox, but Donald Trump promised that he would open Fort Knox, and he hasn't. And I'm telling you that the gold is not there. It's a long story, and it's very, very much more complicated than saying it's not there. It's got to do with leases, but let's keep it simple. China, on the other hand, has hoarded 50,000 tons of gold, and just gold, excluding silver, to back its currency in the event of a currency crisis. Let that sink in. 50,000 tons. All of the gold that has ever been mined in history is, I don't look at the figures daily, but it's about 230,000 tons. Let that sink in. China has hoarded more than a fifth of all of the gold that has been mined since the beginning of mankind. And you can verify that on World Gold Council or wherever you like. It's a well-known thing.
The other night, I spoke about it in one of my news programs about the amount of gold that the Russians has collected over the past 3-4 years. It is enormous amounts.
And I can tell you, I hope I'm not giving away secrets here. I know about that intimately because dear me, I could get into so much trouble for what I'm saying. I hope I don't. I was escorted. Obviously, they're a country at war. I was escorted through much of my trip through Russia, not all of the time, by KGB people. I'm going to, again, Professor, I'm trying to keep it simple. People don't know the SVR and the FSB. So I was escorted by proper pucker KGB guys. One was a lieutenant colonel, proper pucker. And on a given day, I overheard a conversation, and I said to him, you're going about it all wrong. Not that I'm the great expert on this field, but I know something about it. He said to me, oh, well, so what would you do then? I said, I have a contact. I'll ring him. And I set up. No, I didn't set anything up. I was the matchmaker between a guy who's set up and a guy who's buying. Amounts, Andre, that you I mean, at least Kulain, that you can't credit. Because you take your phone, now I know what the deal is, obviously. Take my phone, calculator, kilograms, how many ounces in a kilogram, how much is the ounce right now, 4,200. What is the premium? I know what the premium is. What is the discount on the other end? I know what it is. What is the commission that guy's getting? I know what that is. So minus, minus, minus. And you think, nobody has that money. It's phenomenal.
Well, look, Simon, for me, I'm not in it on the levels that you are. But for me, we are in a situation, I have said it so many times on my channel. If you look at the amounts of the overdrafts of the different countries, the first question I ask is, who do we owe that money to? Who is the creditor? Who is the creditor? And
it's the eight families that own the Federal Reserve.
And I say, where the hell is that money? Where is it? Where is that money?
It doesn't exist. It's a debt denominated in money that doesn't exist. They don't even print it anymore. They just lend it into existence. So what happens is you go to your bank, you say, I'd like to have a mortgage, please, R1 million. You've got to buy a new house. And they say, all right, you've got R1 million. But they didn't have that R1 million in the first place. They lent it into existence. Now it theoretically exists, but nobody ever prints it.
Yeah. No, I understand that concept and construct, and I have seen it. And the thing is this, what I would like to know is, if this financial system crash, which it will crash, I mean, the fucking thing is not sustainable. What happens to me?
Kulain, I'm telling you, I'm not saying sitting here being all dramatic, because actually this is not a serious thing. None of us will eat next year if this happens. It will affect us directly because our loans go back to a place, and we're talking about that place that's the problem. So it's going to ripple all the way back down to us. It's not like, well, I'm in South Africa, so the debt has got nothing to do with me. The debt has got everything to do with you, because when they start calling in their money, they're going to call in every single cent that South Africa ever had. That means you. We will not eat next year because of the story that I've told today.
Yeah, well, Simon, the fucking question is, can any one of us, anyone listening to us, can we actually do anything about it?
Colleen, I'll try to be brief. I learned a very, very valuable lesson as a youngster. My sport was life-saving. So that's like a club thing. And how it works is you have the professional lifeguards on Amanzimtoti Beach it varies, 5 or 6 days a week, usually 6. And then on the 7th day, the club guys, very highly trained, generally in competitions, the amateurs beat the professionals in the competitions that are held throughout the year. But they're volunteers, so they take over on a Sunday and they give a day's rest to the professional lifeguards as opposed to lifesavers. There's a different name to discern between them. I grew up at Nyoni Rocks Beach, Amanzimtoti, at a time when it had the highest rate of shark attack in the world. They put in nets called the Natal anti-shark measures netting, and the nets are like this. They overlap. They're about 100 meters long. They do this. So the sharks swim in like in an Amazonian fish trap. The sharks are always there. They're not outside the nets. They're inside the nets. Then they panic and they swim straight into the nets and they get caught around the gills. As youngsters, we used to swim out to the nets, and it's very, 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 very scary to a 14-year-old boy trying to burn off some testosterone that's driving his head half demented. We would do these stupid things. And always one of our group of 6 or 7 guys would say, I don't have to be the fastest swimmer if we see a shark today. I only have to be the second slowest. And I was explaining to this. I have a relative who's a very, very genius guy. And yesterday I was explaining. He said to me, what do I do? I said, to go from being the slowest swimmer to being much better than the slowest swimmer, maybe not the first, but not the second to last, is easy. It's quick and easy. It's like these things that you see on the internet where they say, would you like to know how fat you are compared to the rest of the world? And you fill in your details. You think, well, I'm doing quite well at the moment. I've just been to America and they're all obese over there. I'm going to be, top 10% skinny people. And it tells you that you're in the top 1% of fat people. And then you realize that you're competing against Calcutta. So to make a huge change is actually very, very easy. To make a big difference can happen easily. If you buy a little bit of silver, you're no longer in the bottom 10%. You're now in the top 50%. If you store a little bit of fuel, it's not the same as having a Cobra gunship helicopter for the trouble that's lying ahead or having $1 trillion in the bank. No, it's not. But in percentage terms, a little bit of silver, a walkie-talkie, a little bit of fuel, a little bit of food, lessen your debt a little bit because the bank is going to come knocking. Lessen your debt just a little bit.
I have got fucking zero debt.
Yeah.
I learned my lesson.
The average man who listens to this is going to be verward. He's going to say, but how am I? No, my bro. To go from being the slowest swimmer to the second slowest or the third slowest or the fourth slowest is just a few weeks of swimming lessons, because that is how the pyramid is shaped. You think you're in great shape, but your, whatever it is, 13% body fat that you're so proud of is competing against New Delhi.
No, I understand what you're saying. The thing is this, that, I have this attitude that I focus on one or two things on my channel, and that's what I stick to. And I've been talking to the people for the past 2 years. I've said to them, get out of debt, because debt is going to be what they're going to use to kill you, because they nearly killed me with debt. I mean, I went through it physically. In 1989, in 1988, December, we had an import franchise for fancy welding rods from a guy in Hong Kong. His name was Leon something. I can't remember his surname. And that Christmas message of his, and those were the days of still telex and no fax and things like that. It was telex. We got this telex message from him. And then he said, my advice to you is get out of debt now. If you're not out of debt by June 1989, not even your maker will be able to save you. And I must tell you, it was debt that fucking killed my first life. And a small amount. In today's amounts, it's fuck all, 135,000 rand. Nothing. But my whole empire crashed for that. And if I look at the youngsters today, they owe on their credit cards. Yes, they buy expensive cars, they buy expensive houses. And I think to myself, guys, if you miss one payment, you've got a problem, because you're already on the margin. How are you going to catch up that backlog? And then you miss a second payment and you're done. I've always had the principle in my businesses since 1989, in my second life, I call it my second life, that my first mission is to get 3 months of overheads in the bank. That gives me 3 months to make adjustments to the business and see whether I can save it or not. But at least it's 3 months. And but how many people, how few businessmen do you know that don't have overdrafts?
Yeah, very few. Very few. In fact, I know some successful businessmen. One guy in particular, he's done a very clever thing. He needed money to expand, and he expanded hugely. But he is actively counting on relinquishing those assets. In other words, the collateral to the loans. He's done it very, very cleverly. He said, if the worst comes to the worst, fine, they can take it all back. I'm counting on that. I'm planning around that. I'm saving money with that in mind. But right now, I'm going to run as hard and as fast as I can. But unlike the next guy who, when he loses his house, is going to lose everything, I'm going to be able to break up my empire in chunks as it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And the last portion is not secured. It's not mortgaged. The last portion is owned out and out by me. So I'll be stuck on an island of these assets, and that will be fine. Then I'll wait it out. But you did right, Kulain. You are 100% right. Apart from those very rare exceptions, like my friend.
But you know, there's people that they come with this clever shit stories and say, yeah, you must mobilize your assets. You must mobilize your assets. And I said to the guy, a young guy, and I said to him, now you listen carefully to me. I fucking mobilize only myself. All right. Fact of the matter is, I pay my cars off. I pay my fucking bonds off on my farm. I pay it off. You say I'm stupid by doing it. You want me to. Your advice is I must go and take that assets as collateral and borrow more and buy more. I say, fuck you. If the shit hits the fan, all me and my wife need to worry about is to eat. I don't need to worry about the payment on a car. I don't need to worry about a payment on a house. I don't. I just have to look, we have to eat. I've got chickens here, and I've got some veggies and shit, but and I've got some fish here in the ponds and so forth. We won't die of hunger, that's for sure. But the fact of the matter is, if you've got debt, you're screwed. You're screwed.
Because you're dead right.
And a lot of people think the fact that they've got the collateral in fixed property. The problem is when the market collapses, you're going to get fuck all for that property.
But you're still going to have to pay your debt at the rates of the value of the house previously.
Yeah, that's the big problem. Simon, well, that there is dark days coming is for sure. I am worried about the fact that a lot of people do not realize that at the core of all this turmoil sits, it's actually a spiritual war. They see that, and they just look at the earthly things, and they try to maneuver around those things. I have the suspicion that, I may be very wrong, but I have a suspicion that the survivors are going to be Russia, China, Iran, Northern Korea, and then maybe some of the other Asian countries.
Yeah.
But the West, as far as I'm concerned, is screwed beyond repair.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that this is the end of 3,000 years of primacy, which is not to take away from other cultures and races and peoples. When you work for an organization like Sakelanders and you're already perceived to be a neo-Nazi, which is just absolute nonsense, and then you say something like this, then they think you're being a supremacist. But the reality is that with very few exceptions, the Western culture that began with, let's say, the ancient Greeks has been the preeminent success story of mankind for 3,000 years solid. And you and I are witnessing the end of that before our very eyes. I agree with you 100%, Kulain.
Yeah. So, people say to me, yeah, but this is going to happen to us. The blacks are going to do this and that. And, I was very concerned. And it worried me a lot. And in October last year, I was sitting here in the morning firing up my machines and things. And I got a whisper, the Boer tribe sal okay wees. And I thought, okay. But if I look at the numbers, it doesn't sound possible. And then a friend of mine sent me some scripture, 2 Chronicles 20. And I read it, and it says here, God will destroy the enemy. And I said, okay. And I started from there on. I just told my listeners, do not engage. It's not our fight. Don't engage. It's not our fight. Stay out of it. And people ask me, what do you think? And I say, this morning, someone asked me again, what do you think is going to happen? And I said, look, the big reality that everybody is dodging is there is a vast number of immigrants in this country. They were trying to bullshit us with 2.5 million and all of that cuck. I've got information from very reliable sources that told me last year already, the security guys say 25 million. The statistical guys said to me, I think there's about 50 million here. Now, yesterday or the day before yesterday, I see articles appearing. How could we miss 32 million? Now, 32 million immigrants. The reality of that is a large portion of those immigrants that are here, they used to be child soldiers.
Mm.
So they are warriors.
Mm.
They came to South Africa. They started a new life for themselves. Used the opportunities. Look how easy they took the township economy away from the locals.
Mm. Mm.
Just like that. Now, do you for one moment think, Simon, that those people are going to sit quietly and see these locals loot their places?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do it.
Yeah.
They're going to fight them. So I'm of the opinion that the shit is going to start by a massive fight between the locals and the immigrants. And they are going to slaughter them by the thousands. That's what's going to happen. Because these local blacks of ours, most of them, are useless. They can talk on Facebook and on Twitter and so forth, but when it comes to a real fight, they're going to run like rabbits. And these immigrants. And then we've got another problem. Our society is so factionalized that before you know what's going on, the factions are going to start fighting one another. And it's going to be chaos. It's just going to be chaos. And
I think so, Colleen.
A guy asked me, what are the chances of a coup? And I said, I think the possibility and the reality of a coup is basically zero. For the simple reality that there's not a single grouping that have nationwide influence. So if they execute a coup, they're going to be in charge of the buildings where they are. Whatever, say they do it in Cape Town. What the fuck about the people in Limpopo? They're not even going to listen to their shit, man.
Yeah.
So they can't control the country. They will never be able to control the whole country. So that is the reason, and I also think that's the reason why we have never had a really serious threat of a civil war, because there's not a single group that feels strong enough to take on the whole country.
Kulain, I'm sorry to be so abrupt, but remember how I said earlier on that there was something that I had to do later. I need to get going.
Okay. Anything you want to tell the viewers on the end, dear?
Yeah, Suidlanders, suidlanders.org. Please visit our website. Please support us. Consider joining. Go to a meeting. And more importantly than anything else, prepare yourself for dark days ahead. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. And you don't have to be a Sina van Rensburg fanatic like I am. You can have your own opinions. But clearly, in the flesh, right now, there are very, very serious events happening. And I'll end with one quick anecdote. In 1994, when the Budapest Accords were concluded to supervise the repatriation, the sorting out of the fallen Soviet Union's nuclear arsenal, they had to retrieve something like 86 nuclear bombs from Ukraine. The Ukraine thing is just a coincidence. It could have been Moldova, Kazakhstan. It's coincidental that it's Ukraine. 54 of them were missing. Somebody is sitting on 54 nuclear bombs. That's just, I think, the most fascinating thing to end with. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you for having us on your show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Simon. Have a great day.
Same to you. Cheerio.
Cheers. Okay, there it is. Listen and think. As I always say, just listen and think. This was interesting. Thank you for listening.